be back with you again. Thank you for joining us in S-File. I'm Ayola Kasim. The world leaders are committing to do more to mitigate the effects of climate change, and many have pledged to contribute to a near-empty global fund known as the Green Climate Fund. All this happened during the climate summit in the last week of September in the United States of America. All the details after this break. The United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon hailed the achievement of the UN Climate Summit, saying the event and the pledges by countries and industries show the world can rise to the climate challenge. Now the details of that summit. On Sunday, the 21st of September, 2 days to the United Nations Climate Summit, hundreds of thousands of people marched in New York and in over 2,000 other communities around the world in what organizers called the largest climate change demonstration in history. With banners, flags, floats and drums, protesters at the People's Climate March overwhelmed Midtown Manhattan in flocks of vivid color, demanding action ahead of the United Nations Climate Summit. It was an expression of the love for all that climate change threatens and the hope that this world can be saved and a society powered by 100 clean energy can be built. The massive march kicked off at 11:30 a.m. on the ritzy Upper West Side along Central Park in New York before winding its way through the city on a 2-mile route. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, former US Vice President Al Gore, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, and actors Mark Ruffalo and Leonardo DiCaprio joined thousands of protesters at the march. Protesters chanted, "What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now."
Let your voice be heard.
Katrina Maloney traveled over 500 miles to be in New York. Her concern is what the future holds for her 6-year-old Moira, who also is learning to voice her opposition to unsustainable lifestyle. The two joined hundreds of thousands of campaigners in the financial capital to voice the discontentment on how the environment is being managed.
I think the planet's not going in a good direction, and I'm here to let my voice be heard.
This is very important to me. I have had a good life. I want my daughter to have a good life. I want her to feel she can have children and they'll have a good life. That's why I'm here.
On Monday, the 22nd, hundreds of protesters also assembled in New York City's financial district, with some planning to risk arrest during an unsanctioned blockade on Wall Street to call attention to what organizers say is capitalism's contribution to climate change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wall Street invests in all the polluting, wasteful, toxic, destructive and extractive industries that are causing this crisis. Wall Street itself profits from the destruction of this planet and its human and natural resources. So we have to stop them, basically. And we've got to stop them from interfering with the politics of democracy. Right now, tomorrow, the UN Summit is meeting. The agenda on the inside is being set by Wall Street. The agenda on the inside is being set by the most polluting corporations that are driving this crisis. We can't let that happen.
The group marched up Broadway towards the steps of the New York Stock Exchange for a sit-in and blockade, where, according to organizers, some 200 people will risk arrest by the New York City Police Department during the civil disobedience action.
Much of the carbon emissions that are influencing our climate right now are generated by resource extraction, by consumption, excessive consumption, which is driven by advertising and the promotion of consumerism. All of that is a corporate drive that creates that dynamic. And so that's just basically incompatible with continuing to have a livable planet. So I think we need to take power back from corporations and allow democracy to actually flourish.
Carrying a massive silver ball representing carbon emission, the march came quickly to a standstill after police blocked off the road leading to Wall Street. Protesters instead sat down on Broadway and continued chanting. The event is part of Climate Week, which seeks to draw attention to carbon emissions and their link to global warming.
I'm hoping that the people in the towers, kind of open their eyes and open their ears. There's things that have to resonate with them. They have children, that need to have a better place and a better system to grow up under. So I'm hopeful the message hits home.
Well, I think a lot of it is about divestment. So normal people taking their money out of funds and investments that are fueling climate change. And I think also it's about the people that work on Wall Street getting in touch with their inner selves and realizing that they have to live on the planet too, and no matter how much money you have, you can't escape the harm we're doing to the planet.
The Flood Wall Street campaign has roots in the Occupy Wall Street movement that started in a downtown Manhattan park in 2011 to protest what it called unfair banking practices that serve the wealthiest 1%, leaving behind 99% of the world's population. And this time, the people's call seems too loud to be ignored.
Initiative was also launched.
The world leaders agreed on Tuesday the 23rd, just 2 days after the first rally, to widen the use of renewable energy and raise billions of dollars in aid for developing countries in an effort to increase the prospects for a wide-ranging deal to slow global warming. The one-day summit, hosted by the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, set goals to halt losses of tropical forests by 2030, improve food production, and hike the share of electric vehicles in cities to 30% of the new vehicle sales by 2030.
Never before have so many leaders gathered to commit to action on climate change. I thank every one of you who came to New York with ambition and commitment.
The non-binding initiatives were set by various coalitions of government, multinational companies, cities, financial groups, investors, environmental organizations, and other groups. The targets are meant to help prepare a 200-nation summit in Paris in late 2015 to finalize a deal to slow rising greenhouse gas emissions. Until now, work has been slow, with many countries more focused on improving economic growth and creating jobs. Governments and investors said they will raise more than $200 billion in climate financing by the end of 2015, including $30 billion in green bonds by commercial banks and $100 billion from a group of development banks.
A new coalition of governments, business, finance, multilateral development banks, and civil society leaders announced their commitment to mobilize upwards of $200 billion for financing low-carbon and climate-resilient development.
The United Nations said that pledges of financial support will give a significant boost to a promise by rich nations in 2009 to raise $100 billion a year by 2020 from all sources to help poor countries shift to renewable energy and adapt to heat waves, droughts, and rising seas. Separately, an alliance of about 30 countries, including the United Nations, and a coalition of multinational companies set a goal of halving losses of forests by 2020 and halting losses by 2030. If fully implemented, this will stave off between 4.5 billion and 8.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions a year, equivalent to emissions by all the world's 1 billion cars. President Obama addressed the United Nations Climate Change Summit with a statement meant to build political momentum for a global deal on climate change in 2015 and a list of old and new commitments his administration has made to address it to date.
As one of America's governors has said, we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. So today I am here personally as the leader of the world's largest economy and its second largest emitter to say that we have begun to do something about it. The United States has made ambitious investments in clean energy and ambitious reductions in our carbon emissions. We now harness 3 times as much electricity from the wind and 10 times as much from the sun as we did when I came into office. Within a decade, our cars will go twice as far on a gallon of gas, and already every major automaker offers electric vehicles. We've made unprecedented investments to cut energy waste in our homes and our buildings and our appliances, all of which will save consumers billions of dollars, and we are committed to helping communities build climate-resilient infrastructure. So all told, these advances have helped create jobs, grow our economy, and drive our carbon pollution to its lowest levels in nearly 2 decades, proving that there does not have to be a conflict between a sound environment and strong economic growth. I met with Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Guoli and reiterated my belief that as the 2 largest economies and emitters in the world, we have a special responsibility to lead. That's what big nations have to do.